earn more money but too busy to start a side hustle? Do it the right way and teach your money to make more money for yourself, even when you're asleep. Dale Corpus will show you just how here on the School of Cash Flow. With his entrepreneurial mindset and extensive experience in real estate and finance, Dale will help you become a responsible, strategic, and passionate passive real estate investor. Learn how you can increase your earnings or find more ways to make money. Only here on the School of Cash Flow.
Good afternoon and welcome to the School of Cash Flow podcast. I'm the host, Dale Corpus. So people listening to podcasts just like this one are typically seeking, answers as they want to improve their lives overall, and they want to get more, time back and ultimately maybe achieve financial freedom. And you know what? It's a really good goal. And financial freedom really means that your investments or your passive income pays for your needs, your wants, your daily living expenses. And you don't have to, work for money, and it frees people up to do what they really are meant to do. So, sometimes we look for the easy way out, but part of making all this happen is really not just spending all the money that you make during a year. So whether you make $1 million or $100,000 a year, think of putting some of that money away into an investment that pays you over and over again. And, that's the invested income, the passive income that I'm talking about. And it's really more about what you keep and invest versus what you actually make. So my guest today, Arianne Lemire, has achieved financial freedom through real estate investing. And I'm really excited to bring her on as a guest. So Ari, her nickname, she is a former speech language pathologist turned real estate investor, has rehabbed and wholesaled over 500 single family properties and has ownership in over 2,000 multifamily rental units in the Southeast with partner investors. So she was also previously 50K in debt and went to an 8-figure net worth and 7-figure passive income. So with this financial freedom, she's been able to travel 3 to 4 months a year for the last few years to spend time with friends and family, and realize that she wants to share that freedom with others. So she learned and launched Wealth Gym, a community where they help busy professionals create time and financial freedom and retire in as little as 1 to 7 years. So let's get this conversation started. Ari, welcome to the show. How are you?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, Dale. I'm so excited to be on your show, and I just love the name, the School of Cash Flow podcast. Like, I really think that more people should be here on the School of Cash Flow podcast. It's really the kind of the foundation of financial freedom.
No,
it's
it
cash
is.
flow. So
I mean, just like you, I'm passionate about just like financial independence, financial freedom, which is why I named my cash flow this way. I mean, I live by it, and I mean, I know you do too. I mean, you're living this in your life, and you're even teaching people about it too. So we're both on that same, journey, and I love it. So can you just tell my audience, where are you based out of geographically?
yeah, so I'm actually in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. Destin, Florida might be something people know more about. We're pretty much like 4 hours south of Atlanta, Georgia, is where we are in the Florida Panhandle.
Okay. And so tell me your story. I mean, how the heck did you get into real estate? Because you didn't start off in real estate.
Right. Yeah. So like I was just like everybody else, right? Like I did the good kid thing where your parents tell you to go to school, get a good job, get good grades, get married, and that's it, right?
Right.
So I did that. I was speech language pathologist, married a software developer. So like from the outside looking in, we're like, you guys got it made. You got great professions. You got married. But then we realized that wait, like there's something wrong in this picture. So I was actually born in the Philippines, moved to New Zealand, and then my husband is from Florida.
Yeah.
And when we got married, so we moved together to Florida, and then we were like, okay, that's great, but we have family in the Philippines and New Zealand. So how in the world are we going to see them when we just have like 2 weeks time off? I was in the medical field, so I couldn't really take it because I was the only speech therapist in the building at the time.
Yeah.
So we were just like our world crumbled because we were like, this nice life that we built isn't something we actually want to live. Like we don't want to live a life where we can't see our family. So that's where this all started. This whole investing and money and finance journey started from that like very painful point in life when we realized that the life we thought we wanted isn't actually the dream life. So from that, we started looking for a way out of pretty much the life we built ourselves. And we looked and looked and looked and just tried to see how people actually manage to quote unquote retire and have
Yep.
financial freedom. And we looked at all the stuff, right? Stocks and trading and all that kind of stuff. Then we ended up with real estate because it was like Chris's dad actually owns a few rentals. So Chris is my husband.
Okay.
And it was something easy for us to understand, right? Like, okay, we're going to save up some money. We're going to buy some real estate. They pay us monthly in rental income. And that's the plan. That's what we're going to do. So that was the beginning of a few-year-long journey to financial freedom.
Okay, no, it's great. And it's like you got out of the rat race. I mean, we're all kind of just told in schools to really, get that education or maybe even go to grad school, get that high paying job or whatever it is. But once you have that job, a lot of times people realize that they become a slave to that job, right?
Right.
And they don't necessarily have the freedom that they want to be able to do what they want. And it's like your story is really kind of resonates with all of that stuff. And I mean, which I love of how you just jumped into this. I mean, can I ask you then, like the fact that you were in a completely different field and getting into real estate, how the heck did you even find that first deal? And how did you have the confidence to even go forward with that?
So the first deal took about 6 months from when we started learning about real estate to actually closing on the very first deal.
Okay.
So it definitely wasn't like, okay, snap, got my deal.
Yeah.
That's great. Like it took listening to a lot of podcasts like this and reading. So we would go on like Bigger Pockets, is a popular forum, and reading all about like how you're supposed to find these deals. So we did a lot of education in the beginning. But really, like if you're a listener right now and you're trying to get your first deal, like nothing really beats making offers.
Yeah.
So like link up with a great agent like Dale and just start submitting offers. Because no matter how many times we like analyze deals and like, did scenarios on a piece of paper and in our head until we started making those offers, which was probably 3 months in from education, then nothing really happened until then. Because like the real learning happens when you start getting yourself out there and taking the action to actually submit the offers.
Yeah. I mean, everything you read from in a book or you listen on a podcast, I mean, it gets you some basic fundamentals, but you don't really know what you're doing until you just really just jump into it and really experience it. Yeah. Can we go back to that first deal? Like, what was that first deal? What did you do? How'd you find it?
So the very first deal was actually a townhouse, and it was listed in the multiple listing service, the realtor website, but it was also it was an auction.
Okay.
So if you guys have heard, there are some auction websites like auction.com, xome.com, Hubzu. There's several different ones. But we were looking at those websites and we found a townhome in our area that was in the price range we wanted to buy in. And so we submitted an offer. It was probably like the 20th offer we had submitted in 3 months. And then that one finally got accepted, which was great. It was like a fixer-upper, right? Like we're in Florida. I know some of the listeners are in California. We bought it for $55,000 back in 2015. Today that's now worth like $225,000.
Wow. Yeah.
But yeah, like way back then, properties were still a little cheaper. So we bought that. We moved into it first. So we were like our first tenants. We fixed it up as we were living in it. And then as we bought other rental properties too. So that's the story of that first deal.
So I know that, in the past, before you got in real estate, you had mentioned that you were in 50K, you were 50K in debt prior. And then now you're financially free. I mean, it sounds like your first investment, if I heard you correctly, for that first property was in 2015. Is that correct?
Yes. So end of
Okay.
2015.
Yeah, that was we're in 2021, so that's 6 years later. What a
Mhm.
difference that has made. I mean,
Yes.
tell me, like, I'm just curious. I mean, that 50K in debt, can I ask you where was that from?
Mainly student loans. So I was in grad school. So I had like 3 years of undergrad, 2 years of grad school, and then most of that we had student loans. I actually worked during all those years, 5 years
Yep.
in undergrad and grad school, and paid off a good chunk of it. So it would have been like 200 grand if I hadn't been paying it off throughout. But after graduation, I still had 50 grand left.
Got it. Were you did you leverage off that first, transaction that you did to be able to do more deals? Obviously, it went up in equity. I'm just trying to understand the progression because
Yeah, yeah.
you need to start. A lot
So
of people think that they need to have a lot of money just to do something in real estate, and I'm just trying to understand how you did it.
yeah. So people don't. A lot of people actually start out putting 0 to 3% down on their first owner occupied loan, which, like I told you earlier, we lived in our first
Yeah,
investment. So you could have done that. We didn't know we could do that.
yeah.
The beauty of like education. Now you know, I didn't.
Now you
So
know.
we actually saved up $55,000. And like you heard, like we took us like 6 months to kind of buy the first deal. So when we started, we only had like $20,000, and we were gonna put 20,000, 20% down on something. Uh, as we went on throughout the year, we actually saved up enough to buy this auction property for cash. So we bought that for cash.
Okay.
And then we used something called the delayed financing exemption,
Yep.
where if you buy something with cash or like cash like funds, you can refinance all of your money back out within, 30 to 60 days,
Yep.
assuming it appraises for, like the property has to appraise for a little bit more because you can only pull out up to like 75% of the appraised value.
Correct.
So we used that. So we had, we spent 55 grand, got it back in 30 days. And then we used that to buy our next rental property. The next one was actually for $70,000. So I'd saved up a little bit more to buy a $70,000 rental property. And then we did the exact same thing. So we bought it for 70K cash, did the delayed financing exemption, pulled back the 70K. And then we had two properties and still 70K in our bank account.
Love it. Yeah, I love it. I mean, I love the fact that you jumped in and your very first deal that you used the delayed financing strategy. I mean, I'm very familiar with that strategy. I'm a San Francisco Bay Area realtor, so we use that a lot for folks that aren't necessarily investors, but folks that, that are able to pay cash and be able to compete with, offers in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, for example, where there's sometimes 20, 30 plus offers on a home with no
Right.
contingencies. So it's like we need to be able to close fast. So
Right.
love the fact that you use that strategy and that you were able to get financing, and pull it back out to just leverage and do other deals. Let me ask you this. So it's just like you did the delayed financing and then you did those, you acquired properties. Like initially, like did you learn anything from those initial deals? I mean, what lessons did you learn?
Yes, I definitely learned a lot. So before we closed on the one that we did close on, I think we were actually under contract on a fourplex
Okay.
that we were gonna put, $40,000 down. We were buying it for 160K. And then that property did not appraise, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
So we went through the whole process, submitted an offer, did the due diligence, and then it was short by like $20,000. So we had to put an extra $20,000 in if we wanted it.
Okay.
In hindsight, it worked out because this is the path we went down on, right?
Yeah.
But like today, if I had that exact same deal, I probably would have just put the 20,000, the extra $20,000 in.
Yeah.
Because it still would have been a great deal. But hindsight's 2020. And like it ended up pushing us down a different path, which led to here. So I can't complain.
Yeah.
But so that's one of the lessons. The other lesson is I think it's just putting in that time and effort. So, like I said earlier, it took us probably like 20 offers before we actually closed on one. And I think in the beginning, we had this idea that, oh, like this will happen fast, right? Like I guess all of us have an optimistic view, but it did help us to see that like, oh, it's not going to be like 3 offers, but
Okay.
if I put in 10 to 20 offers, then I know that somewhere in that realm, might be the first one, might be the 20th one, like I'll probably get something, right? And it helped me like frame my mindset for the future, because I just know that it's just this funnel, right? Like
Yeah.
I look at this many deals, I submit offers on a smaller amount, and then I'll actually get something, actually buy something that's a smaller amount than that. But it just helped me like keep on going for the future ones.
Okay. So the key thing I'm just hearing from this is that it really is a numbers game. Sometimes people might even get paralyzed thinking, if their first offer didn't get accepted, they were like, oh, this is not for me, and they want to stop. It's like, no, it's not. It doesn't work like that. It's just like, you got to persevere, right? And just kind of keep going through it. It really is just the amount of offers you put out is really gonna, you're not gonna get everyone accepted, but it's just like that one right one, because you have your set number as an investor of what makes sense,
Right.
And it's like, if it doesn't make sense, why do the deal? There are other deals to be had, right? Can I ask you, I mean, for folks that might be still needed investing, thinking that they still need a lot of money to invest, like, do you have any advice for them, for folks that think they have to have a ton of money already?
So one of the things that we actually teach, so like we have Wealth Gym, which is an education program. One of the things we teach is for people to find lazy money.
Okay.
Basically, it's money that maybe they didn't know they have, or they didn't know they could access, that they can actually use. So one of the things, especially right now, is like if someone owns a house, whether it's their personal residence or a rental they bought that they kind of just let sit there. Like most properties have appreciated a lot, even just in the last 2 years, but especially if you've owned it for more than 10 years. And a lot of people are afraid of potentially touching that kind of money, right? Like they think it's like sacred.
Yeah.
But that could be a personal belief, but like if people looked at the numbers, it's a numbers game. If let's say you refinance that property or put a home equity line of credit on it, and you had access to an extra 50, 100, like some people have hundreds of thousands of dollars they can access on a line of credit, and you can put that into something that gets you a 10%, 15% or more return, then you're a lot better off than kind of just letting that lazy money sit there. But that's one idea, right? Like usually people have something. Another one that we talk about is like a 401k. Like a lot of times you can borrow from a 401k. And when you borrow, you're actually paying yourself interest. So it's not like you're losing any money by doing that. But if you're responsible and you don't use it to buy like, a boat, right? Like buy some cash flowing real estate or invest in some real estate funds or syndications, then that actually could get you ahead. And it's money you didn't even think of using. So I would say like people need to like look into things like that.
No, very creative. I mean, it's like, I too have used myself that home equity line of credit idea that you were talking about, because I like the idea of arbitrage in the sense that my home equity line, let's just say the rate is 4%, but I could go out there and invest in something for 12, 15%, and that pays for the debt service on the home equity line and then some. So, to me, it makes sense, but it's just like a different way of thinking about it. You know what I mean? It's just like a little bit of a paradigm shift. I wanted to ask you, so when you first started off getting into real estate, when you bought your initial properties, I take it you were still working as that speech pathologist? Were you still working that W-2 job, or like, what was the progression of like when you left that job?
So I did that for the first year. So for the whole 2015 and 2016, I was still working the speech pathologist job. I quit the job the end of that first year. So we actually ended up starting flipping houses. So that third rental, I said I bought one and then two, and then we had 70K. We actually bought a third rental after that. And that one, we couldn't really use the same model because it needed a lot more renovations. And with the delayed financing exemption, you can only pull out like your initial investment. So usually your purchase price plus closing costs. And it needed like $40,000 to $50,000 of renovations. One, we didn't have that. And then two, if we put that in there, well, we couldn't pull all our money back out, and this whole domino thing would stop. So what we ended up doing was we actually partnered with one of our coworkers, and they funded the renovation, and we paid them some profits from when we sold that. So it became a flip.
Okay.
And then we saw that, since my job was the most restraining, like I couldn't really leave my job because I was in medical field, it's very lots of red tape in it. Whereas Chris, he could work from home. He's a software developer. So we decided that I would quit my job first, and I would then flip houses while he still had the software job as we were building this passive income.
Okay. So this, I know you did. I know you flipped multiple homes and whatnot, but was that something that you planned on doing, or did it just happen through that third transaction that you just mentioned?
Yeah, we didn't really plan on it. Kind of just happened. It was like, it was so that house we actually bought had a lot of termites. The third one, termites, and then needed a new roof. So like we didn't know that it had termites until we closed on it and saw. So yes, that was a complete surprise, and it kind of just turned into that flip. So
got it. I feel that's funny. So like, real estate's so funny. I feel like, even me personally, I feel like I never thought I'd ever be in real estate, being a realtor, and I did mortgages as well, and I invest, but it's just, I don't know, it's just something that just happens to you. It's kind of similar to your story where you started flipping homes. It just happened, right? It's like, so is life.
It's like, it like opens, you go down a path and you see another door, and here's another door, and then you end up picking the door you prefer.
Speaking of, on a related note, then was it like, okay, you were looking for a way out of, just not being a slave to the job or whatever, to have that flexibility. Were you seeking other vehicles besides real estate, or was it like, did you know for sure it was real estate? Like, why not anything else?
So we did look at other things, but the other things weren't they were just less straightforward and nothing's guaranteed, but less guaranteed. Yes. So there's a lot of different asset classes, right? But real estate is the one that, if you look at all of them, we talk about the 4 ways of making money in investments, right? So there's cash flow, there's appreciation where the value goes up. The third is tax benefits. And the fourth is like leverage, or you're benefiting something from leverage, right? And in real estate, most of the time that means you can buy more properties with the same amount of money, and your tenant pays down your mortgage. But anyway, like those 4 things, they all exist in real estate. And even in a down market, like only one of them disappears, which is the appreciation where the value goes up. There's still 3 ways to make money. Whereas all the other assets we looked at, right, like stocks, it's mainly appreciation. And if something did happen to the market, then usually what happens is you're forced not to sell your stocks. And that's how you survive, right? Is you sell your stocks and use that to live. So like, we're not anti the other stuff. We have some of our portfolio in them, but most of our net worth is in real estate because it gives us those 4 ways to make that money.
No, I love it. And so part of your bio is, I have to applaud you on this. You have over 2,000 doors right now. And that's quite an accomplishment, knowing that your very first property was only in 2015, just with that, first property that you bought through auction. What was that progression like? I know you were a syndicator now, but like, let's just backtrack and dissect that a little bit. Like, how did you even transition from going from these smaller deals to, for example, being a multifamily syndicator? How did you do that?
Yeah. So initially we bought those 3 rentals that we talked about. And then we actually got distracted with the flipping house business thing. We were like, oh, flipping houses. And then we just flipped houses for 2 years and didn't buy another rental. So we kind of forgot why we started down the real estate path. And then after 2 years of doing that, and we flipped like 100 houses a year, it kind of just came to a point where we're like, hold on, like we still can't see our family, right?
You create another job.
Right. Yeah. So like we left the job to go to another job. Great. It's a bigger, nicer, more well-paying job, but it's still another job. And then we kind of had like this soul searching moment of actually really painful, right? Because we were like, yeah, we were like, yes, we're successful, but hold on, like this is not the success we wanted either. We're very good at creating these things we don't want, apparently. So we went back to the drawing board and said, okay, that's great. We made some money with the flips, like, but we got to go back to the whole passive income cash flow equation. That was what we wanted. And so we were playing catch up, right? And we said, okay, how do we like we kind of went down the wrong path for 2 years. What do we do now? And we started looking at multifamily units, right? And it just so happened that we were talking to a guy who had a house and he didn't want to sell his house, but he wanted to sell 6 fourplexes altogether. So it was a 24 unit, kind of little complex.
Okay.
So we had used all the money we had saved up from flipping houses, bought that. I think we bought those for a little over $1 million, like $1.2 million for 24 units. We didn't know about multifamily financing yet, so we actually used 6 conventional fourplex loans that all closed at the same time. And that was the start of our multifamily journey. From then, since we kind of just started on our own, like it was our capital, and we bought our own little 24 unit. From that, we started partnering with other people who were buying 100 plus units and just said, how can we help, right? How can we partner? Here are our skills. We have some capital to contribute. And let's work together to actually buy these bigger deals, because we saw that it was so much faster, because it took us the same amount of time to buy 24 units as it did to buy one house.
Yeah.
So if we could go to 100 units or 200 units at a time, we just saw that we could scale faster, and we could also help our friends and family come into the deals with us. Because with like the single houses, there really wasn't much to split, right? Like, especially in Florida, we had lower house pricing. Like it was hard to split like one 200K house between 4 people. Whereas when we buy 100, 200 units, then it's a lot easier to bring other people along with us, and we all grow our net worth and grow our cash flow together.
That makes sense. So just so that from my knowledge and understanding, are you still doing flips right now too? In addition to doing multifamily syndications, you kind of have both in parallel?
So we actually wound down the flipping company this year. So this year we'll end at like 30 flips, and then we likely won't be buying anymore. And we're focusing mostly on multifamily now.
Okay. And so speaking of which, like, you probably answered it with that question, but I still wanted to ask. So what's your favorite asset class and just, way of investing in real estate in general?
Yeah. So our favorite is multifamily real estate.
Okay.
Really anything that is like a hold model, right? Buy and hold and cash flow.
Okay.
It just so happens that you can scale faster with multifamily, and it also lends more to working with other people, because you don't have to like specialize in all the 100 things that goes into buying and managing and financing a property. You can actually partner with people who they mainly like renovating, and someone mainly likes managing, and someone mainly likes doing the financing stuff, right? Like it helps you kind of hone in on your zone of genius and work with other people who are geniuses in each of those zones, and you can all have a piece of the pie.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I want to ask you, where are most of your multifamily investments at? Are they mainly around Florida? Are they all over the United States?
They're mostly in the Southeast.
Okay.
So a lot of them are in Florida and like the near areas. So we have about 400 units in Atlanta, Georgia, which is like 4 hours north of us. We have about 500 in Florida. We have some in Texas, Alabama. And and yeah, like some other cities in Georgia. Savannah, Georgia is another one. So
Yeah.
mostly in the Southeast.
The fact that you have over 2,000 doors right now, I mean, I know that you must have systems and just, good processes in place. So like, how are you finding your deals?
So most of them come from our partners.
Yeah.
So we partner with people who like finding the deals. And then we usually are kind of like the financing and operation side. And then we also bring capital to the deal. But most of the deal finding is our partners. They mainly source it from brokers. So they have broker relationships in different areas, and they try to get the off-market deals first, right? So like they have a good relationship, so the broker will show them the deal before it hits the market, and it just lets them prepare the best possible offer, and usually it helps them win the deal.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. So like, key thing I'm hearing from just what you just said is that real estate's really a team sport. And I can attest to that even on just having, my own real estate sales group and whatnot. I can't do everything myself. You'll grow faster when you're able to collaborate with others that have the complementary skill sets, and then you bring something else to the table. And it's the same thing with real estate investing. And that's how you're doing it right now to be able to scale up so quickly, right? It sounds like all your partners are your team. Like, can I ask you, like, how did you find your partners? Was it organic? Did you actually go out and like find people on the internet, like and interview people, or how did it work? Yeah.
It's a lot of different ways.
Everything.
Some people we've met on a podcast like this.
Okay. Yeah.
Some people we've met at a live event. We're in different masterminds and coaching programs. So some people have come from that. So I think it's just putting ourselves out there and, being open to new connections. And then it's funny, like we actually just formed a new partnership last week, and it came from we were at a mastermind event, and we were talking in dinner, and we were saying that we were looking for someone to do like asset management, like help with asset management piece of the business. And then they were talking about how like they were managing like 50 gyms or whatever.
Okay.
And then the next day I just clicked like, oh, why don't we talk to them about that? I mean, if they have the skills to manage 50 gyms, I mean, that's a pretty big like management operation. We're just kind of the similar skill set. So like we actually are in talks about that one. So it's really just meeting people and then listening and then seeing what their strengths are. And I think it's interesting because people, like, you get attracted to people like that, right? Because people are just who they are. You get to know who they are, like what their values are, what their characters like in a different setting. And then it kind of just clicks when you realize that, oh, like we have the same values. We have complementary skill sets. You actually are great at and like doing something that maybe I'm not great at and maybe I don't super enjoy. And then vice versa. Like I might be great and good at and enjoy something that they don't particularly love. And it's just a great potential partnership to be made.
No, that's great. A lot of times this stuff's organic, right? It's just like, for example, in my real estate sales business and whatnot, I partner with one gal. Her name is Elizabeth, and we actually met each other because we both are swimmers.
Oh, cool.
So we we had the same stager, but we actually reconnected with each other like in person when we saw each other at the pool for the first time, because we followed each other on social media, and we thought like each other was like we both thought each other was cool. And so and then we ended up being that we ended up deciding to work together, and that partnership just ended up being something that really grew both of our businesses. And it was funny because I wasn't even looking for it, but it's just one of those things. It just happened, and we realized that we did have a complementary skill set, and it's been one of those things that I don't regret. It's just like you just always be open to meeting people is what I mean. What I mean, and I'm saying that too as just advice for all my listeners, because I always feel that you're just one relationship away from just really like exploding your business. Just you never know who you're going to meet and who they know and what they know, right? So be open to it, and it's hard. And I mean, and sometimes like one of those things myself is just like I've always had to work on just being open to meeting people too. I'm an introvert myself, so it's just like I got to put myself out there. to be okay with meeting people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so true. And like I think it's for the listeners too. Like I think it's an encouragement to put yourself out there because you really don't know who needs to meet you either. Like there's been so many people I've met that like I probably have done a poor job at telling them how much they've impacted my life, but sometimes it's like one phrase that they said that I tell myself over and over and over again. So there's this one guy that we probably only spent like an hour together in, the last 5 years, but he said something that really has helped me like get out of my shell. And he said that there are people who will never take action until they hear your story. Right. And I'm like, okay, like, and I'm shy too. Like I'm an introvert and like, I don't want to go on a podcast. I don't want to, go to the event. Like it's uncomfortable. But I remember that phrase that
You
person
need to
told
be
me.
right. Yeah. Okay. What was the phrase? What was that phrase?
So it was that. So
Oh, being
he
like, yeah. So
like
like what being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
um so it was so he said that there are going to be people who won't take action, which
Got it.
means they won't change their life unless they hear your specific story,
Story.
right? So like for me, that's what helps me encourage myself to go out there and go to another event and go on another
I love it.
podcast.
I mean, the fact that we're both here, I mean, I'm a podcast host, yet I'm an introvert, and you're here too, and you're a podcast guest.
Right.
I mean, just but it's like my thing is, it's like I really just want to be able to share this knowledge. And I think we're coming from the same place of being
Mhm.
able to just kind of give back and just show what you could do. You
Right.
know what I mean? There's so many ways, like it doesn't need to be real estate, but real estate is what we know, but it's a great way to build that financial freedom. So Ari, so I know you've done a lot of deals and whatnot. Are there any deal, like was there any like grand slam deals that you wish you could just repeat over and over again? Anything you could say about like really good deal experiences?
Yeah. So like that first 24 unit was probably still my favorite. If I could just do like 100 of those, I would love it. We still own it today. So
Okay.
we bought those for like 55 a door, right? $55,000 per unit. At the time they were rented for like $600 per month. So it was like low. We renovated the insides of the units. So we put about like $7,000 or $8,000 per unit in. And then now they're renting for about 1290 a door. So
Okay.
they're cash flow really well. And then they're also like worth somewhere between like 150,000 and 180,000 per door.
Okay.
So like that's triple or more the value. And like the cash flow is amazing.
Okay.
And they're local. So like if we wanted to check on them, we can.
Okay.
So if we could do just more of those and like just bring more people on along the ride and have some nice cash flowing assets in a really good location, we'd like that.
Nice.
So yeah.
So you sound like correct me if I'm wrong, but you really like to be in the mix. You like more active investing versus like being a passive investor, correct?
Um, so it depends. Like I really like real estate. It's kind of like a hobby.
Yeah.
So even when I try not to do it, like it still kind of happens. And then I also want to bring other people along the ride. So yes and no. Like I like the passive lifestyle. It's great,
Yeah.
but like I don't want to keep it to myself,
Uh-huh.
which means I end up doing a deal, right? And then I bring other people along the ride with me.
Okay, that makes sense. And so let's just talk about money strategies. I mean, we talked about, we're talking about financial freedom, and
Mhm.
let's talk about money strategies between like different classes, like middle class and multi
Mhm.
folks. Like, what would you say is the difference between like how middle class and wealthy people handle their money and how they invest, etc.?
So I think one of the main things that's different is like, and I was born definitely in a very middle class family where money was stressful, right? Like we never talked about money. If we did, it was stressful. There was just like this stigma around it. And now reflecting on that, that was like, it's really hard to become wealthy when you don't even talk about money and there's this bad connotation about it, right? So like one of the things we try to do more now and like help our friends with it and help our members in Wealth Gym do more is actually talk about money. So we
Okay.
actually teach people like 3 habits that will make you wealthy, whether no matter how where you are in the process, right?
Yeah.
And number 1 is tracking your numbers.
Okay.
So actually having like a sheet or whatever you want to have. Like we actually have a calculator in our program, where you put in like, this is what I make each month. This is what I spend each month. This is what I'm
Yeah.
saving each month. And this is where that's going, right? Like where the savings is going. And obviously, ideally, that's in investments. Number 2 is a regular meeting. So you track your numbers and then ideally you have a meeting with your family. So it's you or your spouse. If your kids are old enough, they can join too. Or we talk about like what money the family is making, where their savings is, and what we're doing with that, what our goals are, so that we all can be excited about the goals and we can work together on those. So like if we want to go on a 3-month vacation to New Zealand and the Philippines, like we can all plan for that. How can we make that happen, right? And then number 3, we teach people how to invest regularly, right? Like I think people sometimes will try to time when they invest, or they try to find this like magical unicorn that's going to get you 1,000% return. But the problem is, if you just look for the magical unicorn, it might never come. You might be waiting in the sidelines for 10 years and the magical
Yeah.
unicorn never came. And then you see all of your friends are now, cash flowing well and are wealthy. And then there you are, you're still waiting for this one magical unicorn. So we tell people like, have a realistic metric, right? Whatever cash on cash return you want,
Yep.
10, 15%, whatever it is, just not 1,000%. Obviously ask your like realtor like for advice of what's reasonable in an area, and then just look for that. Like the singles, so singles and doubles win the game, and sometimes they turn into the home runs and the magical unicorns. You just never know. Like
Right.
when we bought the 24 unit, it was just a single, right? We bought it for $50K, it was renting for $600. That's just like the 1% rule in a lower priced area, but it turned into a home run. Now it's a home run, but we didn't know 3 years ago that it was going to turn into this. So just look for singles and doubles and then invest in those things regularly.
Okay. I love it. Yeah. So like real estate too is it's not a get rich quick type of play. It's like a long-term play. The longer you play in it, the wealthier you'd be. It's just like, just stay the course. Right. And let's talk about, you teach people about, building passive income and all that stuff. It's just like, and you put things in play where people can really, set the goal to retire with passive income and within 1 to 7 years. And that's a real thing, right? Can you elaborate more?
Yeah. Like everyone, even if you're starting from scratch, you can retire in 7 years. And that's probably the long path, right? And for most people, because some people have bought a house, some people have saved money, some people have lazy money to invest. You'd be surprised that if you actually put that lazy money to work into investments that get you a good return, you might be able to retire in like a year or 3. So like that's actually what we do in Wealth Gym. We show people all those different ways that they can tap into money they didn't even think they could use.
Right.
And like they see that, oh wow, like this is real. I can actually like live off my passive income and then some, right? So, and it really starts with looking at your numbers, right? Like I know it's kind of like getting on the weighing scale, right? Like nobody really likes to see how much I weigh, right?
Yeah.
But that's the first step of getting into better shape and getting into like a better lifestyle. And that's the same thing with our money and our finances. We got to look at the numbers, and that's how we can adjust. It's not probably going to be perfect the first time. No one's perfect. But if we just focus on 1% improvements every day and just tweak something, right? Maybe not eat out every single day if we want to divert that into investments. Even that little thing can make such a big difference.
Nice, nice. I mean, I love the fact that you are such like a wealth builder, like a wealth strategist for that matter too, and just being able to talk about this stuff and teach folks. I mean, have you always like how did this come about? I take it you're always like this. I mean, it's just like you're so, I mean, was it all the education that you learned along the way that had you, you know, that made you think this way? Because it's like you really think outside the box is what I'm trying to say.
Mm. I think it came from a lot of trial and error and pain growing up. So growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. And I remember thinking that, look, okay, I'm going to get that good job so I can help my parents pay for the bill so we don't have to like stress out about money too much. So
Yeah.
I always have been like, I need to figure out this money thing minded,
Yeah.
at least. That was a blessing from my younger years. And then as I went through life, like I just was like I was always interested in like getting better at it, right?
Yeah.
So like in the beginning we weren't great at it, right? Like I also had, like I told you guys, I had 200 grand in student loan debt, right? And I had to pay that off.
Yeah.
Would I be further along if I didn't have that? Probably. It's not like I'm using my degree right now. um but you know, we all go through whatever we go through, and that's what teaches us what we know now. And I wouldn't be who I am, and I wouldn't have learned all I learned if it wasn't for those. I'm still thankful. And then I'm just thankful that I can share those tips and tricks with other people now. So maybe they don't have to go through some of those painful moments themselves.
No, that's like, I love the, you know, the hustle and drive within you. It's like you see a lot of that stuff in myself. I mean, for my audience, you guys, both of us, like, Ari happens to be a Filipina. I'm Filipino myself. And like
Uh-huh.
my parents were immigrants and I didn't realize how poor we were until like later on. You only know what you know. And then I realized, wow, we really didn't have any money. But money's a state of mind though, because I was still really happy as a kid.
Mhm.
But I just knew I
Yeah.
wanted more for myself. So that's where that drive and hustle came from myself to just to build something. Because if it was meant to be, it's really up to me. Nobody else was going to give it to me.
Mhm.
And the fact that you yourself is, you know, you're talking the talk and just, you know, you're paying it forward. And I love that about what the fact that you're talking about this on my show right now. Going back to you and your business, like, what are you excited about in your business right now?
So I'm very excited that we are helping like so many people like retire in a year. So basically we have like a program where we help people retire in a year to 1 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just so rewarding because we just started that program in May of this year and now we're in October, right? So like there's actually people planning their retirement and we're talking about, okay, you got to put in your
Nice.
notice now. Like, and sometimes there's still a lot of like fear around it, even though they have the passive income and they know it's coming in. There's still a lot of like that. It's just it's what they knew for the last however many
Right.
years they've been doing it.
That's their
But it's
identity. That this is like
right.
they have to figure out. They have to be okay with this new identity.
Yeah, but yeah, that is so rewarding for me because it was one thing for us to do it, right? But to see other people now go through that same kind of disbelief of like,
Yeah.
oh, is this actually real? Right.
Yeah.
And then what am I gonna do now with my life? That's a whole nother podcast. Um, but yeah, that's what I'm most excited about. Actually seeing those people like live the life they want to live and go on
Yeah.
to the next path.
Um, one thing I also wanted to touch at that, like, you're one of the few like females that I brought on to my show. It's like you're an investor and you're also a minority Filipina. It's like, did you see those? Like, how did you cover the diversity of that? Like, did you see that as a disadvantage or advantage, or like, how did you deal with it? It's like this
Yeah,
is really like it's mainly real estate investing. It's mainly all guys.
right. Yeah, and mostly white guys. We're in the South, so
Yeah.
we're in the South. We're
No,
pretty
it's
much in
true.
Alabama, so there's a lot
Yes,
of
that's true. I'm just curious. I'm
Alabama
just kind of
people.
understand how like what was going on in your mind and like how did you just kind of overcome all of that?
Yeah, so in the beginning, like I think I was in my head a lot because I would go to meetups and it was mostly guys and there was like no Asian in the
Yeah,
crowd, right? And then when we were buying our first single families, like I would meet contractors because my husband was the one working. Remember, I was the one who quit my job first, so I would
yeah,
be the one meeting them at the houses, and they like kind of look at me funny. And then I just kind of realized that, well, I mean, I'm the only one here, right? Like I don't really have a choice. So I'm either going to tell them what they need to do and have this conversation, or it's not going to happen. So I think I call it like I kind of just like got over myself, right? Like maybe they care, maybe they don't, but like at the end of the day, it's not going to happen if I don't do it.
Right.
And then later on, I actually ended up seeing it as like a plus, because I do look different. And like if we're on a stage, I look different, which is great. Like people are like, oh, who's that person? Who's that little like,
You're more memorable. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That's always
And
good.
and now that I have been like on different podcasts, there have been like other female Filipinas and
Yeah.
Asians and people who have told me that like they really appreciate like hearing my story, because then they could see that it's possible for them because someone else like them did it. So like I really love hearing those little messages.
No, well, I love it too. And any other big goals you're working on, either personal or business?
I think I wanted to mention something earlier. Like I think we were talking about how I think you were mentioning how like it takes like it's a numbers game, right? Like there's so
Yeah.
many offers.
Yeah.
And I think it's like that for anything. Like if one of you listeners, you're just starting out and you see all of the Facebook or social media reels, right? Like everybody's closing 10,000 units and everybody has this $1 million house they just closed on, right? Like Dale did last week, right? Like you see all the highlights, but you don't really see all of the 10 other sellers that, told Dale no, or like the 20 offers I made before we closed this one deal. I think people, because we don't really want to complain, right? We don't want to complain on social media, but what that shows to the outsiders is maybe it's just someone has like the Midas touch and the golden,
Right.
the golden touch. We really don't. Like we go through a lot of pain to get through that reward. And I think when people know that and have that know that that's the reality, it helps people move forward themselves. Like it's not just you that's not getting the offer accepted. Like all of us are. We just don't post it on social media when we don't get it accepted.
Social media is funny like that. We don't post like blood, sweat, and tears. We just post the successes, but they don't know that like it took years and years of failing, but failing forward, to get to where we are today. Because even I don't post that on my social media because people don't necessarily want to hear that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. It doesn't resonate with them. But it's like I love the fact that you're being very real with that. Question I like to ask this now to my guests is like, so what does success mean to you?
So success is a very hard thing to define. My husband and I actually do something like this once a year where we define winning or define success for each area of our life. And we do it, for example, for a marriage, and we'll write down what does success mean for our marriage, right? And for us, it's we still love each other and we still want to make each other like happier, right? Like we want to do more for each other. That's what and if at any time in the year we don't believe that phrase, then we're currently not winning and we got to like get back on the winning train, on the success train. So I think it's different for everyone. And what's important is you do define success for you. For me, it changes. It changes every year, sometimes every quarter. And we write down what it is, right? Like maybe this quarter, like my main focus is my marriage. I want to be I want us to have a better relationship. Some months it might be I want to have a better relationship with my family, or I want to travel more and give myself what I want. Like one of our hobbies is travel and food, so we like going places and eating new food. So it really changes, but like I really want the listeners to know, like it's different for you. Like please don't follow someone else's version of success, because so many people do that and so many people live unfulfilled lives. If you don't want to travel and you want to eat food, that's okay, right? Like I don't think that's bad. Like you do you. You focus on your success, and you don't have to own 2,000 units. You don't have to flip 500 houses. Like no one cares. No one cares.
Good
like
point.
you gotta do what makes you happy.
Love it. So what's your superpower that's contributed to, creating this great life you have right now, would you say?
I think my best superpower is probably like self-awareness. Even though
Uh-huh.
I'm pretty sure I can be more self-aware, but I just always reflect on like what did I do? What went well? What didn't go well? What can I do better next time?
Uh-huh.
And how can I surround myself with people who, fill in my weaknesses, and I can support with my strength. So I think I just reflect a lot,
Uh-huh.
and it helps me grow faster, I think.
Well, I love everything that you've accomplished, and you've done amazing. Since you started in 2015, it's amazing. How can somebody get a hold of you?
So I have a brand new podcast called Wealth Gym, and I'm gonna send Dale the link, so you'll
Okay,
see
I'll have it in my
in the
show
show
notes,
notes.
everybody. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
So I'm on the Wealth Gym podcast, and if you go to wealthgym.com, you should know more about the podcast too. And then that's also my website, so you can see how you can get in touch with me on there as well.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you, Ari, for your time today. I'm glad that you were able to join me on this episode. I enjoyed our conversation. You're very humble. You're very real. You offer tremendous value. And to my listeners, thank you for checking out this episode of the School of Cash Flow. And remember to leave a podcast review on iTunes, as it helps me attract even more great guests like Ari. So until next time, live life abundantly.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the School of Cash Flow. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into all the tips and tricks you can use to help you on your passive investing journey. In the meantime, you may visit www.cashflowschoolpodcast.com for more great episodes. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share. That's all for this episode, folks. See you next time.